This is a multi-generational farm that goes back. I mean, we have parts of the land going back to the first person that came from England, which was Richard Gammon. So there's a big lineage in that. And of course, back then it wasn't as if they were farming, it was sustenance farming. So just living off the land, being here. Right after college, I mean, basically I met my husband, and then we got into ag just with my background and the sciences, and then growing up on a farm. I guess it was just always somehow a hidden interest of mine to farm. I don't know how this has happened. It just did, because we farmed. I started farming then. I mean, this was in my early 20s. And it seems like ever since then, I've always been involved with, agriculture, not just, I mean, it's really always been organic agriculture, because we believe very strongly in organic agriculture in the sense of regenerative, whatever word you want to use. I mean, chemical free, and trying to do the land better than it was before you. A person that's wanting to get into farming, I mean, you have to realize it is something that ends up in your mind and in your being and in your brain all the time. It's kind of, or at least it is for me. I mean, I feel like it's all ever in it's always there. And so you can't really, shift away. So once you're in it, you kind of have to keep moving. And it's kind of like you've seen these animals, you've seen our animals, the different herds. I mean, it's kind of like having 200 children that you feel like you're responsible for on a regular basis.
I think we kind of wanted to, I don't know, I feel like just really pay respect to what the previous owners had done. And I think we sort of we wanted to start small. We're like, oh yeah, we'll do this. And it was gonna be bread mostly. And we'll just bring some produce. And then as we got going, it was we need to fill this space, I think. And I think we owed it to the space.
Yeah, and the previous owners did such a good job of filling out this space with just so many different types of produce that it was really awesome to see what could be grown in a half acre. So I feel like that was the challenge of moving into here and what we were most excited to eventually do, but we just kind of leaned into that fully first year.
Yeah.
And it seemed to go okay.
Yeah, I think had we not seen what the possibilities were here, we probably would have just made a baseball field or something.
Yeah.
But that was super empowering, because it was this can be done. And granted, we had no idea what we were doing, and it still felt super intimidating, and it still totally is. But yeah, I mean, we bought the house in October, and we spent
pretty much the whole winter at the library, just poring over every gardening book that would come in.
Yeah. And it was still there was stuff that we retained throughout all that, but it was nothing was gonna be as beneficial as just doing it.
I was raised outside of Niagara Falls, New York. No one in my family ever worked in agriculture. Somehow I became interested in plants and horticulture, and when I was 15, my family moved to South Florida, and everything grew there. And so I had built a small greenhouse in the backyard. At one point, I had 150 pineapple plants growing. And then it came time to go to college. And I started out in college for the first 2 years as planning to be a math and science teacher. And then as I got into my junior year as an education major and started taking philosophy of education classes and things that weren't science and math related as much, I found that really wasn't what I wanted to do. So I actually dropped out of college and worked for a year. And in that time, I learned that I could actually go to school for plants. and horticulture. So I applied to the University of Florida and went back to college to finish my last 2 years as a horticulture major at the University of Florida. And then I worked for several years in some large nurseries, producing ornamental plants in South Florida, and then returned to graduate school and got a master's degree from the University of Florida. I did blueberry research for my master's degree. And then I continued on and went to the University of California at Davis and got a PhD and studied pistachios for that. Then I went back to Florida and was a faculty member at the University of Florida and did citrus research and extension. And after that, I decided I wanted to move back to California and got a job as the research director for the California Avocado Commission. And that was the most recent job I had before I decided to start farming for myself. So in 2017, my husband and I started talking about our future and what we wanted to do. And he was looking to retire early. He had owned a business for a number of years that he was ready to sell and be done. So we started looking at where could we move, that land was relatively cheap, water was available, and we could farm. The climate was nice as well. I didn't want to go back to Florida, and we didn't want to shovel snow, so Tennessee kind of rose to the top, and we found our farm in Greeneville, Tennessee at the end of 2017 and started farming full-time in 2020. And how from when we bought the farm in 2017 to when we started actually farming in 2020, how we moved from plants to poultry, I still don't remember exactly how that happened, but our original plan was that we were going to have a fruit orchard and vegetables. Since that was my background, that's what I knew. And somewhere in those intervening years, we learned about pastured poultry, and at that time there really weren't any producers in East Tennessee. And it seemed like something we could tackle and do.
I guess it was just bred into me. But yeah, I mean, we as kids, we were always out on the farm. Actually, the house that I grew up in is 2 or 3 miles down the road. But we were over here almost every day. And, I was on the tractor when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I wasn't strong enough to steer it. You didn't have power steering in those days, so I would drive it to the end of the field, stop, and then my dad would come, turn it around, and I'd drive it back. And so, I guess it's just been bred in me.
And Aunt Willie's Wildflowers start when I married Roy, and I would be helping him. We have 2 tractors with all the hay and everything. One day I just started to cry. I was down in the driveway near where the hoop house is, because the farm can overtake you. It's hard work, it's hot, it's humid. I hate heat. I'm a Yankee from the cool north. And so I needed a niche. So when we would mow the fields, Roy would mow, and before I'd run the tedder, I'd pick up the black-eyed Susans, the butterfly weeds, and the daisies. I'd put them in a pitcher of water, and I'd take them to church. My neighbor said, "You need to sell at the farmer's market." I said, "No, but I'll try selling them down at Aunt Willie's." So we got a little flower stand. We put flowers out. At the end of the day, the flowers were still there, but someone had stolen the stand. So we decided there's a better way to do flowers. We started with the Kingsport Farmers Market. We joined the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers, where we learned so much about growing. And then it took off from there. So that's how we got our start.
When I was really young, I showed cattle, and then I went to high school and showed cattle all through there. When I was in high school, I was playing sports, playing basketball, and decided I wanted to play in college. So went to school and ended up playing football at Southern Virginia University and doing my undergraduate and pre-vet, more biochem and biology. I got my bachelor's degree in biology from that university, and then I was really struggling there my senior year on what to do with my life. because I knew I wanted to work in an agricultural field. I knew I wanted to work with animals, but I knew that I wanted to have enough finances to raise a family, and it's just really expensive to farm and try to raise a family too at the same time. So I was going to go to vet school. There in my senior year, I was really having an internal conflict with it, and I got a phone call. I got a text from my longtime friend Nate Wells, and he texted me. He said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I'll never forget where I was standing. I was working construction with one of my cousins, and I was like, "Man, I don't know. I just want to play cowboy when I grow up. You know, I just want to be on a farm. I want to raise animals and raise healthy, clean food." And so, long story short, Nate texted me back and said, "Let's start a farm," and the rest is history. So I wrapped up my degree. You know, we started looking for farms every weekend. I'd come home from college and I'd walk farms, probably walked 100 to 150 farms. Brookhaven Farm is absolutely self-made. We had to purchase the property, purchase the equipment. I mean, everything from a hammer to a saw to just everything we've had to purchase. And so that's kind of how we started. And when we started, we thought we were big time. You know, we ordered 500 chickens our first go, and we built chicken tractors, and we built fence, and we did all those things, and we failed a lot. I mean, we didn't even have very many products to sell our first 6-7 months. We didn't have any products to sell our first 6 or 7 months. And so that was really tough because I didn't have a job. I mean, I had a job, but it wasn't paying me. So it was tough, but and we've had some more times like that. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I got from not farming full time and for a living, and then farming for a living. When I think about risk, I think I try to think about it really logically. I know that I wanted to farm. Let's just take risk and combine it with farming and what I'm doing. I knew that I wanted to farm, and I knew that it was going to be a massive risk. So those are kind of my knowns. The only other known thing I knew was that if I'm going to bet my future on anybody, I want to bet it on myself, because I know that I'm not always going to be the smartest. I'm not going to have the most money doing this farming. I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm going to try to outwork everything. I'm going to try to outwork everything else. So if I can work harder, start earlier, work later, I don't see it. Of course, it's a massive risk. I feel a lot of stress. There's a lot of things that happens when we started this farm, and still we take massive risk every day. We just started a supplement company. So just when we got kind of stable, we're going to jump off the diving board again and do it another time. But I think if you're going to take a risk, bet on yourself. Don't bet on other people, because you can't control their lives and their wants and their needs. So bet on yourself, and then be disciplined enough to stick to it, and hold yourself accountable, and have honest, real conversations with yourself. Is this working? Is it not working? You know, you don't fail. You never fail. You just fail when you quit. So don't quit, and just keep going.
I got interested in farming as a bread baker. So I was baking for a while, and then I started wanting to learn about where does the main ingredient of bread come from. And I wanted to get the best grain possible. So when I met Duane, he had already been farming some, and we decided to grow grain together to dive down that path of where does flour originate? Where does the grain come from? I grew up, my mom was a caterer, and so we had a lot of food in our kitchen all the time, and she was always preparing food. And there's an old couple up the road that I would bike to, and they had a large garden, so I would go up and talk to them. And that combination of my mom always cooking a lot of food in the kitchen, and then this older couple that were really happy in their 80s, growing food, being outside, that combination came back to me years later. And it just makes sense for our lifestyle of being outside and working with nature so intimately.
Yeah, and I got into farming. I have a family history. My great-grandparents were farmers, full-time farmers, though that once I hit my grandpa, he had another profession but still farmed part-time. And then him and my mom propagated blueberries in North Georgia in the 70s and helped be a part of the renaissance of bringing the blueberry propagation and expanding the blueberry acreage in Georgia. And they helped, not necessarily breeding, but mostly just as a propagation nursery. And then, so when I was homeschooled, and as a project when I was around 16, my dad's like, let's go down to Grandpa's buddy in Alma, Georgia, and buy some plants. And so I bought the plants, and he matched my funds with the tractor work, and that just kind of led into a small homeschool business enterprise. And then I moved away and did different things at the farm. And then I came back about 10 years ago with the idea of being a berry farm. And I chose to be a farmer because of wanting to bring healthy food to my community, my region, and also for myself. It was, I think, having fresh produce that I can eat. It's just hard to buy food that's grown in Florida and California. It just doesn't have the flavor and energy I feel that food off of a farm has. And I really couldn't afford to buy, a $35 box every single week. So it's just an easier way to grow fresh produce for myself.
This is our family farm. It's a 10-generation farm, so we got this as a Revolutionary War grant in 1778. So it's been in many, many different types of agriculture. I worked for the Natural Resource Conservation Service for 34 years, and when I retired, I came back to farm the family farm. It was a dairy when I was younger, and now I am an incubator farm. I actually was a production farm for about 4 years where we grew vegetables and flowers for sale. But now I incubate young farmers who need land to farm on. We have sheep here now and cattle. And so this farm, and then I lease out the hay ground. So this farm is primarily to keep it in production, to give young farmers an opportunity to have land without having the capital expense. But it's been a fun journey. I came back about 10 years ago from the government, and so it's mostly just been helping other farmers farm. When we first came back, it was just known as the Hale Farm, and so, but the oaks were especially on this farm precious to my grandparents. This community, because this was 1,000 acres in a Revolutionary War grant when we first got it. Back in 1778, it was just a path that went from one end to the other, which is about 2 miles down that way. The family cemetery is actually at the other end. And so what I looked around when I got here, and we have some of the last oaks that are about the same age as the farm. And so there's a huge one as you come in the farm lane. And when I had the foresters out here saying, what do I do? Because they're about at the end of their lifespan. He said, this one would have been here as a little tiny seedling when your forebears, came on this in 1778. So oaks were really important to me. They used to line all the way from the church, which my family established, Oak Hill Baptist Church, all the way down. And as the roads got bigger, of course, it took the roots of the trees. So I have the last 17 original oaks on the farm. Then I got this from my grands, and so I came up with a name that this was Grand Oak Farm, if they came from my great-great-great-great-grandparents. And it just kind of stuck as that this was the Grand Oak Farm.
We're Dylan and Rachel with Rain Crow Farm here in just outside of Jonesborough, downtown Jonesborough, Tennessee. And we have a small-scale diversified vegetable farm.
I got interested in farming through kind of just working outside, doing trail work and conservation work, which was jobs I had before farming. And then I figured I should try farming and started interning seasonally on different farms, and then just got really into it and hooked and been doing it ever since.
I think I wanted to become a farmer back when I was in high school, and it was pretty unexpected, at least by my parents. And then I ended up studying other things in college, but Dylan and I knew each other, and when I heard he was on a farm interning, or I guess at that point you were working on a farm, I reached out to Dylan to say, hey, I'm thinking about wanting to farm. Could I come visit? And I just really liked where Dylan was at. And so I moved down to the farm where he was working at the time outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and started farming with him there.
It was a little foreclosure home that had, it was like on a, it's very much a neighborhood, so an urban kind of setting. And it had about a little less than a half acre. And so we just started there when we first moved to Johnson City. I still have family here, so that was one of the draws. And living outside Nashville, land prices and all that was very expensive. So it was a way to kind of get into farming and have our own business without not really having a lot of capital. So yeah, we kind of fixed the house up and started the business at the same time. And that's how we started in Johnson City, and just kind of started real small with doing farmers markets and growing it from there.
Our urban farm had, so we were on, I think it was like 0.44 of an acre is like what the lot itself was.
Yeah.
And so then of course you factor in like there's a house on that, there's a shed on that, there's a place to park the car on that. And so then that whittled it down to about what, like a quarter of an acre that we were able to grow there?
Yeah, probably like a quarter to maybe a third.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much like not having any kind of yard, just like everything was like vegetable beds or flower beds.
Even like the berm, like the right of way between the fence and the road, we didn't feel like we could grow vegetables there, but we could grow flowers there. So like even that area we turned up and put something there. So, I mean, we made every piece of that land profitable and functional for the farm.
Yeah.
And I think we always knew we wanted to have a bigger farm. And so, you know, that was always part of it, is like we kept really good records, and especially like financial records, and worked really hard to kind of build up our capital while we were there. So like really low investment on what we put in there, and really like reinvesting and saving as much money out of the farm as we could, because we knew long term that we wanted to be on a larger piece of land. Things became, I think, more serious in about maybe 2022. We bought the first place in 2017, and I think we both kind of always thought like this is maybe like a 5-year stepping stone, and then we'll like be ready to step into the next place. And so one of our CSA members approached us at the farmers market when they were picking up their CSA share, that they were looking to downsize and were wanting to sell their farmhouse and 5 acres, and they wanted to make sure it was still farming, and actually they would love it if we bought their farm. I didn't want to hope for so much because I loved their house. I delivered vegetables to them on their porch before, and so I was like, well, yes, we would love that. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we can do that.
Yeah. The main way we were able to do that was through the FSA and getting a loan through them. The benefit of having more space, has allowed us to do more cover crops and rotations and things like that, so we don't have to do things so intensively with the finished compost, and the permanent bed system is something we don't do as much. And for me, it was important to try to minimize as many things coming into the farm. So I'm really excited about using cover crops to build soil and contain weed pressure and things like that.